Hey everyone! A massive shout out to all of Mr. Cheese students and followers tuning in. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a super important topic in geography, how we use our planet's resources. This is your guide to Topic 4, Unit 1. So, whether this is your first time seeing this stuff or you're deep in exam prep, don't worry, I've got your back. Okay, let's start with a bit of a brain teaser. Think about this. What do your phone, the lunch you ate today, and the very air you're breathing, what do they all have in common? I know, they seem completely different, right? But the answer, well, the answer is the key to understanding pretty much everything about how our world functions. And that's what we're talking about today, resources. So here's our game plan. First, we'll nail down what resources even are. Then, we'll look at what happens when we start using them up. From there, we'll explore the impact this has on our planet. And we'll wrap it all up with the big solution, sustainability. Sound good? Let's get into it. All right, first things first. What in the world are resources? I know it sounds like a simple question, but trust me, getting this definition down is absolutely crucial. Everything else we talk about today is going to build right on this foundation. So what are we talking about here? At its core, a resource is just anything people need and use. Simple as that. The fancy textbook definition might call them natural and economic assets, but really, it's the stuff all around us. The water you drink, the cotton in your t-shirt, the metals inside your phone, all of it. These are the things that literally power our lives. Okay, but here's the thing. Not all resources are the same. This is a super important distinction. On one hand, you've got renewable resources. The best way to think about these is like a rechargeable battery. You know, things like solar energy, wind, even water. They just keep on going. But then you have non-renewables. These are more like a disposable battery. Once you use them up, they're gone. Forever. We're talking about stuff like gold, oil, and coal. And let me tell you, knowing the difference between these two is key to understanding the rest of this topic. So we've got our two types of resources down, the rechargeable ones and the disposable ones. Now we get to the really messy part, exploitation and depletion. Basically, using stuff up. This is where things get complicated, because it's all about how we, as humans, use these resources. And sometimes we use them way faster than the planet can keep up. And if you check out the mind map from your course materials, it lays out the reasons perfectly. So why are we running out of things? Well, it's kind of like a perfect storm, isn't it? You've got more people on the planet, and we're all consuming more and more stuff. Add in things like pollution, deforestation, and new industries, and you can see how it all adds up. Think of each of these as a leaky faucet, all draining from the same supply. Okay, so we're using all this stuff. What's the big deal? Well, that brings us right to our next section, the impact on our planet. And this isn't some abstract idea from a textbook. This is where we see the real, tangible consequences. It's why this topic is so incredibly important to understand right now. Let's take a big one, deforestation. I mean, it's way more than just cutting down trees. It kicks off this whole chain reaction. First, when you remove the trees, there's nothing left to hold the soil in place, so it just washes away. That makes it really hard to grow anything. And at the exact same time, all the carbon that was stored in those trees gets released into the atmosphere as CO2, which, as we know, contributes to a warmer planet. So yeah, it's a real double whammy. And that point about a warmer planet, it's a huge deal. Just think about it. Most of our energy comes from burning those non-renewable resources, right? Fossil fuels like coal and oil. When we do that, we're basically pumping greenhouse gases into the air. And these gases act like a big invisible blanket wrapping around the Earth, trapping heat. That's the greenhouse effect, and it's the engine driving the climate change we hear so much about. All right, I know that all sounds pretty intense. And look, it is a serious problem, but it is not hopeless, not at all. So now we're going to pivot. We're going to shift gears and start talking about the solution. And that solution, that big idea, can be summed up in one word: sustainability. Now, if you're taking notes, you're going to want to star this one. This is probably the most important definition in this whole unit. Sustainability. It's all about one simple but really powerful idea: making sure we can meet our own needs today without messing things up for future generations. It's about finding that sweet spot, that balance, so that our kids and their kids have the same resources we do. It's a pretty big deal when you think about it. And, you know, a lot of people get this wrong. They think sustainability is just about the environment, saving the rainforests and the polar bears. But it's so much more than that. The best way to think about it is like a three-legged stool. You need the environmental leg, sure, but you also need a social leg. It has to be fair for people. And you need an economic leg. It has to actually work financially. If you take away any one of those legs, what happens? The whole stool just topples over. Okay, this table right here, this is basically your cheat sheet for the exam. Seriously, grab a screenshot. It lays out the difference so clearly. On one side, you have sustainable use. It's all about protecting, ensuring things last, recycling. On the other side, non-sustainable use. Damaging, wasting, and usually just chasing short-term profits. I mean, the contrast couldn't be more stark. So this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually do it? How do we make sustainability happen? That's what this law section is all about. We're going to bring this huge global idea right down to our level, to you and me. You've probably heard the phrase, think globally, act locally. Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. And you know, the first step to acting locally is figuring out your own personal impact. And that's where this idea of a carbon footprint comes into play. It's basically a measurement of all the greenhouse gases that your own activities produce. Everything from the electricity you use, to the car you ride in, to the food you eat. It takes this massive, confusing issue of climate change and makes it something we can actually measure for ourselves. Which leads us to the final question. And honestly, it might be the most important one. Just take a second and really think about this for yourself. After hearing all of this, what's one single change, maybe even a small one, that you can make, starting today, to reduce your own carbon footprint? What's your first step going to be? Awesome job, everyone. But hey, don't let the conversation end here. If this explainer helped you get your head around the topic, do a friend a favor and share it with them. And of course, you have to be following Mr. Chi. He's always dropping amazing content that'll help you absolutely ace your geography classes. And that is our deep dive into using resources. Make sure you show Mr. Chi some love. Hit that like button, subscribe, and go follow him on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube so you never miss out. Thanks again for tuning in, and happy studying.